Tech Sounds presents EduTrends.
Welcome to EduTrends, presented by the Institute for the Future of Education. This is a Tech Sound podcast, the official podcast of Tecnológico de Monterrey. My name is José Pepe Escamilla. I am Associate Director of the Institute for the Future of Education. Today's guest is Professor Tony Chan, former president of King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia. Tony, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure. I remember the conference in January. Great place.
Yes,
great conference.
I also remember your conference, your keynote in our conference. Great keynote. So before we start in our conversation, I would like to ask you a personal question.
Yes.
What inspired you to pursue a career in education and research?
That's a great question. It was never really planned, okay? Let me put it that way. It sort of happened naturally. I sort of fell into it. You know, I grew up in Hong Kong, and I went through high school. And one day I read a magazine about Richard Feynman, and he had just won the Nobel Prize in physics a few years before. And I love physics. So I said, I want to go to wherever he is. It turns out to be Caltech. So I applied to that school, and through some luck, they admitted me. Then once you get into Caltech, you know Caltech, it's like Monterrey Tech, right? We are similar. And they want people to focus on the fundamental science and technology. They want the student to pursue academic things. So early on, it's very natural for me to stay in academia because, you know, the quest for knowledge, research, you were surrounded by bright people from all over the world, and that is just very attractive. I never thought about going to the corporate world, put it that way. Although now, after a whole lifetime of experience, I wouldn't mind doing something else. Okay, so.
Okay, thank you for your answer. I think many of us also arrive here without planning, no? Because we fall in love with this experience of academia, education, and research.
Well, you're surrounded by people that inspire you. I think that's really,
yes.
You're a role model right there. Yeah.
So, well, you were talking about maybe changing a role and not being in industry in that moment. And now we talk a lot about the role of research and innovation in universities versus industry. What do you think is the primary role of universities in fostering innovation?
Yeah, so this is a perennial struggle in both academia and industry. I think part of the problem is many people think it's a dichotomy. You know, it's like university is supposed to do this, industry is supposed to do that. And I think the reality is that it's an ecosystem. It's a continuum. So let me start with the university, which I'm more familiar with. Well, university basically has two products, two roles, two missions, right? One is to create knowledge, new knowledge. And second is to nurture talents who will go on and do other great things. So if you talk about industry, they need both. Industry, I'm talking about technology, let's say, they need to have the basic technology, which they can then build new product. That's what innovation is about, by the way. In my book, innovation, the word means new, creative new things. But usually now the way it's used is new ideas, new products, new services that will impact society. So it has that implication. Okay. So that's what industry is supposed to do. It takes things created somewhere, maybe created by industry themselves, but typically these are created in academia over a long period of time. But industry knows there's a market need, there's a product that they can create. And so they make money, they make profit for the shareholders, but they also provide services to society. So I think this is an ecosystem and it's not one way. In fact, the problem is that often it's one way. Many people misunderstand that it's not like academics create a knowledge throw over the wall and industry takes it and run. And usually it goes back and forth. I have served as consultant to industry. So I kind of know by talking to the people who have the actual needs and the knowledge of our product, it will inform the academic as to something they have missed or another new problem that they should face. So I think that really is the key, I think, understanding of what the role of university and industry is about. Knowledge and humans, talents, but also an ecosystem both ways.
Both ways. And for innovation, so when you talk about innovation, I also have a definition that I use, a very small definition of innovation that I think that works well, because innovation is not creativity, it's something that adds value. So I always say innovation is a creative process that creates a new thing that delivers value to the end user or to the society. If it doesn't add value, it's just novelty. No, it's not an innovation. And that's part of the challenge also, that many things that are done in universities, they need some special thing to happen so that they become an innovation, no?
Yeah, usually this is what you said is exactly the challenges that academia and industry face. Because the role of research university, like Monterey Tech and Caltech, I mentioned, or KAUST, and HAUST that I work on, their role, their incentives, their KPI for the faculty is publication, right, that promotes new knowledge. The university is primarily, on average, not gear up for creating the products that will impact society. That's a different ecosystem. It doesn't mean that they cannot get close. At least part of the faculty can have a particular talent and interest to do that. But you cannot expect every faculty to be innovators. And I think it's not healthy, actually, for every faculty to be innovators. Because sometimes it's these people with some novel ideas or maverick or crazy ideas that at first does not seem to have any application or products, but at the end, in the slightly medium term, they will turn out to be very useful. So it's kind of like genetics, like evolution. You need to have a diversity of the gene pool, because that's for survival. Then you have survival of the species. That to me is a better analogy. And I think the industry should understand that, because it cannot expect that, hey, we have a problem or we have a market, we need this product. So academia, why don't you forget about your basic research, these crazy ideas, and just work on the problem that we have? I think that's a very natural, right? But that actually will not work. I give you a good example that I often use. You look at, we all have GPS, global positioning system, in our phone, in our smartphone, right? So that the GPS system relies on two things, basically. One is the atomic clock, because you have to measure the distance from the satellite, from where you are, and at the speed of light. That's really how, so it knows the distance. And second, it has to rely on Einstein's general theory of relativity, because light does not travel at a straight line. So when you look at a satellite, it doesn't go at a straight line, because like the moon is this large heavenly body, bends the light. So here's an example. These two aspects cannot be done by Apple. Say that Apple wants to develop a GPS without this basic thing on the atomic clock and Einstein, it will never be able to develop those two. And conversely, when people developed the atomic clock and when Einstein developed general theory of relativity, he wasn't thinking about GPS. So I think a good ecosystem where you have a lot of people doing this, probably a lot of things that fail in developing those two basic science problems, but some of them worked out very well. So I think this is the part of the mystery, if you will, that most people in the public do not really understand, because they think there's a direct line from the product going back, so you can work on this and you'll produce a product. It's not like that.
It's a very interesting and compelling example, of how we have to work on one of many examples, yes, that you have to work in order to do that. And I wonder now if who should pay for that basic research?
That's a very good question. Who should pay for it? Let me use another example to illustrate the point. AI. Everybody's talking about AI, right? So AI seems like it just happened yesterday. Most people never heard about AI until ChatGPT, okay? But we all know now ChatGPT is being superseded by DeepSeek and all these other things, right? It's happening at blinding speed. But it did not happen in a vacuum. I tell you, I took my first course in AI. I'm a computer scientist. My doctoral degree is in computer science. So I took my first class in AI more than 50 years ago. So, but the AI then is very different from the AI today, although the basic approach is not so different, okay? And then, of course, AI went through 2 AI winters, where nobody wanted to talk about it. The funding agency did not want to support it. But this, so there's a lot of research that has been going on at least for half a century, okay? A lot of things have tried and failed before you add up with what we have today. So what we have today is really, serendipity. The current approach to machine learning that leads to this large language models is based on 3 key things. Large amount of data that is available, because before the smartphone and all that, you don't have the large amount of data. Second is you have really very powerful computing machines. This NVIDIA GPU is just one of them, okay? And third, you have really great algorithm for optimization, so that when you develop a model, okay, you need to have the right model for it to work. You probably heard about transformer, for example. This is the kind of the thing that you need. And so in a way, these things were developed over the last decades. But what the surprising thing was, only like slightly over a decade ago, these things sort of came together. It's like a perfect storm, okay? It came together and it's proven itself to work. It's like magic. Even the people who won the Nobel Prize, or in the Turing Award, they did not realize this. They had the belief they worked on this 20 years ago and they could not get funding because the funding agencies showed me something when they could not show it. But now, of course, everybody gets it. Now, there's also the role of the private industry. So there's this Turing Award, right? It's the Nobel Prize for computer science. So a few years ago, the 3 people who did machine learning sort of won the Turing Award. In fact, one of them last year won the Nobel Prize, Jeff Hinton, okay? In physics, actually. In physics, that shows is very interdisciplinary. So they were able to put together these ingredients, okay? And they knew the right test to test them on. The first thing is recognizing images, handwriting, faces, but it has to go beyond that. So I think if you ask them, to be fair, they could not predict that it would have happened like 10 years ago, okay? It's only 10 years ago. So in the private industry is, the companies like DeepMind, you probably know about DeepMind. Of course, OpenAI is a company. Google now is heavily into it. Amazon Meta is all into it. They see, it's interesting, industry has also evolved. Because first of all, they're a company. They have to provide value to shareholders, right? So they see a new technology, they want to implement at scale, right? These are big companies with lots of users. Only they can do it. People at Stanford, MIT, they cannot do it. They are not set up to do this. So they do this. But what I've seen is, at least in this computer-related fields, the companies are actually investing a lot in the basic research because they know they cannot rely only on academia. The only analogy for this in the old day is Bell Labs. Bell Labs, they have scientists who won Nobel Prizes. It's not because they can improve their telephones, right? But they know, first of all, they have enough resources. In a way, they are trying to give back to society to do that. And maybe they will benefit from it. So companies like DeepMind, they grew the people. There were 3 founders. The most favorite one, the Demis Hassabis. He was a student at UCL in University College London. So he founded this company. He was a super master chess player. He used to do computer games, but he sort of caught on to this thing. And he's an amazing guy. And he did AlphaGo, which surprised a lot of people. And I think Google saw the value. They bought them. I forgot, it's like $400 million. Okay. It became part of Google. And then, of course, they did many other things. I think the most impactful thing in my mind is AlphaFold. This for protein folding. So this marries AI with science. And you can see, so AlphaFold is actually has a tremendous impact. It's widely used by chemists and biologists. It's a great tool, but it did not exist in a vacuum. It has a huge database of protein folding, which is created by the knowledge, of course, of the basic science, but also the hard work of many scientists that created individual blueprints for individual proteins. So how you go from the DNA to proteins. But they came and that's the database. But they say, hey, we can make it much more efficient. We can do that using the same database much better than humans. And in a way, given the amount of resources, both dollar sign and human capital, it can only be done in the private industry. I cannot see in academia, you can have a faculty or even a small group of faculty to be able to say, I put aside my basic knowledge pursuit in order to do this problem for society. Because first of all, it takes a lot of time. Second, it takes a lot of resources. The faculty are typically, where did they go? They don't have the resources that big companies like Meta and Google have. So I think this is a good symbiotic relationship. Okay, so to go back and forth. But there's a worrisome trend in this, which is the talent flow part. Because the company in their pursuit of their goals, right, the profit motive, and they're competitive. Google competes tremendously with Meta. So what they want to do is they go and want to recruit all the talents even before they graduate from university. So there's a concept where they go to a top university department and they basically make tremendous offer to the faculty and students. Why don't you come join us? So, this is like multiple fold of their salary from academia, which of course is hard to resist, right, for many academics. But the problem is that in a way you're killing off your seed coins, because this is where the new idea, the new talents are being trained. Mm-hmm. Companies are not the place to train talents, right? So that's not how the culture, the ethos has been set up. So I think this is a delicate balance that I think everybody has to be familiar. By the way, including government. Mm-hmm. Of course, in the US, you have an AI policy announced by, I think it was starting with President Biden. You have the CHIPS Act, this is for semiconductors. So these things are, in a way, it's like huge Band-Aid, if you will. Okay. So say, hey, we have a gap. Let's fill that gap. But I've always said that that's great. I think the ecosystem needs that injection of resources. But if you only do that, you have to actually make sure your basic thing is well. So I'm really worried. You probably follow what's happening in the US, that the current administration is bringing havoc to the whole research enterprise. You probably know. So yes. I'm deeply worried about that because it's very easy to tear down something. It's very, very difficult. It takes decades to build up something like that mm-hmm. ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. To build it back, yes.
Yeah,
I also want to say that I relate to what you said because I also have a degree in computer science and my PhD is in computer science and I did a thesis work related to artificial intelligence. So I also took an AI course in almost 40 years ago, not as long as you.
Well, so for the last... Go ahead.
No, and also I think that industry goes into when they have a lot of money and a lot of high stakes. No, they're like in the case of AI, but also maybe in quantum computing, for instance.
Yeah.
Then when they see there's something that can be commercialized, they go in depth. No, so like the Majorana,
Which is they're wrong.
cure.
Yeah.
No, they even proved that the particle existed after 77 years or whatever, but not because they were interested on the particle, because they were interested on the chip. But I agree with you that we need this basic research, and I would like to move to another thing, which is global challenges. No, so you talk about the challenges with public policies in the U.S., but we also have. Well, a lot of things happening in geopolitics, climate change, health,
Yep.
Nationalism in different parts of the world, and all the AI that has good things, but also concerns about ethical implications, privacy, etc. So what role do you think education, research, higher education can have in these challenges?
Yeah. Well, higher education, especially research university, have a big role to play. But let me back up a bit. I think we live in a very chaotic and uncertain times when we are dealing with all these huge problems facing all of us together, facing humanity. You mentioned climate change and other things, peace, even poverty. Having the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 SDGs. I don't think we're close to even achieving one of them, to tell you the truth. So now there's the ideal situation. Rationally, ideally, these are global problems. No one nation, even the most powerful one, cannot solve this on their own. See, climate change, pollution, you cannot limit it to one country. What one country produces affects the whole world, right? Climate is the whole world. And so ideally, this is idealism. And there's been organization and movement around the world. There is, the one that I'm familiar with is COPs, right? There's now, I think, COPs 29 or 30. So green energy, sustainability. You go there, you have many enthusiasts, academics, activists, politicians, industry, they all go there. Because even for industry, sustainability can be money making, right? It's not just do good. So that's good. But, on the other hand, unfortunately, because it's political, because, when you talk about national policy, there's always the idea that if it's your gain, it's my loss. If it's the world's gain, what do I pay for it? It has to be equal. I think this is the problem that we have. And you mentioned geopolitics. I think you're absolutely right. Instead of working together on some of these problems, what I see is more a sort of decoupling, a multipolar world in a bad way. Multipolar is not necessarily bad. It's more balanced. But basically, okay, you do your thing, I do my thing. In a way, part of the problem is with modern technology, a lot of the technologies can easily be construed as dual use. It can be used for good, but it can be used for military purposes. You mentioned quantum, AI, chips, even climate, right? Or even energy, right? Energy is another one. Energy is crucial, right? The military needs energy, So whenever you come to that, there's always the thinking of certain part of the political spectrum that says, no. This part, even though I understand is good for the world, but we have to keep this to ourselves. We cannot work with these other countries and so on and so forth, right? So this is unfortunate. So there's idealism, there is the reality. All I can hope for is, first of all, academia. Okay. Academia, typically, academics, especially scientists and technology, they are not political in what they do. It doesn't mean that they personally do not have a political view. They are interested in pushing forward the frontier of their discipline. So I think they are in a better position to do this. They are also naturally in their ecosystem, they are more open to collaboration with anybody from around the world. They're open to good idea coming from whatever, right? They go to international conferences and if they see a good idea, they don't really say, what color is your skin? What country you're from? Right? So they really want to do that. So I think academic has that. But on the flip side is academia cannot escape politics. You just look at what's happening in the US now. The academic campus has a lot of politics coming into it, okay? So I don't have to go into the detail. By the way, I should mention this morning before we engage with this, I read, I'm from UCLA, right? I spent years there as a faculty member and dean. So the new chancellor of UCLA is Julio Frank, who's Mexican. He was the Minister of Health. I have not met him, okay? And he sent out a message to the community. And his message was about, what was it? About undocumented immigrants who are studying at UCLA. You know, the worry, they are worried that the immigration department, ICE, immigration and something, I forgot what ICE stands for, would come to campus and search and so on. So Julio Frank is giving advice, outlining the policy, what their rights are, how you should comply. It's really, if you think about this is what the student and faculty have to worry about. So if you talk about this is a really imminent issue, right? Climate change is a long burning fuse. So what I'm afraid is this long burning fuse will get distracted. We'll get distracted about it. We'll lose the momentum. But academia is the key. Politics, and that means government, I'm not as hopeful. I mean, at least with certain governments, every few years you have a change. Okay, so maybe my hope is that while the rivalries goes on, the conversation will continue, I hope. Because the environment may change, the leadership may change, sentiment in society may change. You may take a crisis. It may take a crisis where people realize, hey, we got to put aside our differences and let's work on our commonality. So that may happen. I'm an optimist for humanity.
Mm-hmm. And I think when we work in education, we have to be optimists and somehow.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, if we are not optimists, who is going to be? Right?
Exactly.
We are the academics. We're supposed to be independent thinkers.
Yes, and I've talked to other people here on our podcast, and one of the things that they mention is the stress that faculty, professors are having in education because of the demands that they have, the new things they have to learn, the learning. Have you seen this? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, that it's not new. You know, that's, continuing learning. It's not just for students. It's also for faculty. As I say, the AI I learned 50 years ago is very different from the AI I was doing. I forgot to mention, I was doing computer vision. You know the term, right? You're a computer scientist. Back then it was called computer vision. Today it's called AI. Okay, it's the same problem. So you have to learn. You have to learn new problems. You have to learn new tools. Otherwise, you fall behind. And also, the students, they worry about their future. They want to do things that are in the future. Most students do not work on the things of the past because they are young. They have a long career ahead of them. So if you are always working in the past, your chance of attracting the top ambitious student is just a little lower. I think though it's in self-interest you do that. But over the period of, let's say the scientific revolution, let's say in the last 200 years, people have always have to do, by the way, computer science, your field and my field, did not exist, say 60, 70 years ago. It only happened after the Second World War. You cannot study. In fact, I was actually at that interface. When I went to Stanford to study computer science, each computer science department was under 10 years old. I was a student at Caltech, I mentioned right earlier. Caltech did not have a computer science department. So in a way, student like me And faculty who were in the computer science department back then, they were pioneers. They took a chance on computer science. Today it sort of seems incredible. Everybody wants to study computer science. But back then, people don't know. Maybe it's a fad. Maybe, after a few years, nobody wants to study it. So I think the opportunities are there is for the risk takers, the people who are confident of what they know themselves. They know they can learn the new thing. And frankly, whatever you do now, you have a kind of knowledge base or a bag of tricks, if you will, okay, that. So maybe an easy way, this is what I do, is you don't just take up a new problem that you know nothing about. You look at new problems, there are many. You take some that can potentially make use of your bag of tricks. It's easier for you to ease yourself into that. And once you get your foot in the door, then hopefully you have learned new things. You know what you can. Nobody can do everything. So that's what I do myself. Okay, it's actually fun. It's actually invigorating. And I don't want to be working on the same thing for 50 years, frankly.
Yes.
For me,
I always
fun.
say that we learn by pushing the limits of our ignorance. No? So we go there on the limits and
you wake
push
up
and
in
we
the
push.
morning, you say, hey, I had to learn this new thing. And to me, it brings new energy.
Exactly. So I have a wonderful conversation with you. I want to finish our talk with one last question, if you don't mind,
Sure.
which is the future of AI in education. So you can choose a window of whatever, 3, 5, 10 years. And how do you think education will change with AI?
Yeah. I don't have the crystal ball, but I can base it on my 50 years of academic experience, because I said I work on AI myself and I'm an educator. First of all, what's the French word? Plus ça change, or nothing changed, right? The more things change, everything remains the same. So that's how I forgot how the French saying goes. But we've seen it. So when I was a graduate student at Stanford, they have what they call remote learning. So this is where we go to a class, but there's students elsewhere, and they can ask questions by dialing in. Back then there was no internet like we have today. So that was that, and it was useful. And then much later, you will have the companies like Coursera and edX. You know about them, right? So these are online courses, at MIT, at Harvard. Coursera grew out from Stanford. And frankly, when that happened, everybody would say, oh, that will be the end of academia, the physical university, the Stanford, Harvard, MIT of the world. So why would you pay this incredibly high tuition and go to a place like Stanford and Harvard? And you're not guaranteed that every course is taught by a top lecturer, okay, right? Whereas you can get the best professor in the world and give the online course, and you can all take them. That was the vision. Well, it did not work out that way. For whatever reason. I think one key reason to me is education is not just one-way transmission of knowledge. Why did we go to university? If you think back, okay? Well, some people would go because you can get a good job. That's reasonable. Other people, because it's part of growing up, okay? It's the first time you leave home and you go there. And the third one is you get to know people. You build a network of friends and acquaintances that's good for your career. And you meet people that are different from your local environment. It could be your local where you live. It could be your interests. Let's say we're computer science, but you meet people interested in arts and media and all kinds of stuff. And that's why. And lastly, this may be the most important. In a way, universities, let's be specific, it's a human construct to certify certain things. Let's say you went to Monterey Tech. Monterey Tech stands for something. And there's a brand. It's a brand. And so it has all kinds of implications that helps your career later on. You may meet other alumni. People know about the reputation of your university. You get inspired by your fellow student. It's not in classrooms. So I think for many of these reasons, the use of computing and technology to replace traditional education has never really panned out. Now, it doesn't mean that these technologies will not become great tools. So from this perspective, I think the current trend of AI and machine learning, no doubt it will be a fantastic, extremely useful tool. Okay. I mean, I have used ChatGPT, DeepSeek. It's almost too good. If you're a professor, when you receive an essay, is it written by DeepSeek or ChatGPT or written by the student? But the same thing happened when we had Microsoft Office. Remember before PowerPoint? Okay. It was not easy to make a presentation. But having PowerPoint doesn't mean that you're a good presenter. It doesn't mean that. So I think the same thing with this. So I think academia should embrace these new tools, okay, and use them in an appropriate way, and would take a more liberal view rather than a restrictive view. I remember when ChatGPT came out, there were a lot of discussion. I mean, this is only 6 months ago. There were a lot of discussion about, should we allow the use of ChatGPT in the classroom for the student? Okay. And I was the first to say, of course you should. But many, I think the majority at the beginning would say no, because they would be cheating. But I say, okay, we had handheld calculator. Our students do not have the too long calculation. Are they cheating? I think we have the responsibility in academia, to educate, to inspire our students to face the new technology in their lives, in their careers. So you have to adapt. Of course, you have to make sure they are not just using these tools and not using their own brain and learning something. So that's the job of academia. So to make it short, I think AI will become an incredibly useful tool. It's up to the academic to make maximum use of it. But my personal belief is that it will not replace traditional education in its essence. There will still be Stanford, MIT, Monterey Tech, okay? They will still be there, okay? The best student will still want to go to the best university, okay? So that's my prediction.
Thanks for your thoughts, Tony. I've enjoyed a lot our talk. I thank you for your generosity for coming to IFE conference in January 2025 and also for the time of this chat.
I should remind people, right? I think I mentioned to you, I was president of CAUS for 6 years. In the early years, we have many students from Monterey Tech. In fact, our graduation the announcement was in 3 languages: Spanish, Arabic, and English.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
The reach
so
of our alumni.
I think the Institute for International Education, IIE, we had a CAUS got a contract with them, and they knew about Monterey Tech. So there was a direct pipeline of some of your best students coming to CAUS. We pay well, we have good professors, good facilities. So I think, by the way, they're still coming, but not as many as before. In the early days, it was like 25% of our students were from Monterey Tech. Okay, so there's a deep connection, frankly. And then, of course, microphone I know well. So that's, yeah.
Let's continue our work together, Tony.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Anytime you need me, let me know.
Thanks. Me too.
Thank you.
For more information, visit observatory.tech.mx/EduTrends podcast and ife.tech.mx. A special thanks to Tecnológico de Monterrey, the Institute for the Future of Education, and the Tech Sounds team. EduTrends producers, Esteban Venegas and Christian Igosa. Stay tuned and play Tech Sounds in your favorite podcast app for other great shows and content.